yeah, so just want to kind of get your thoughts on your journey through the PGA and your journey in junior golf. 'Cause I know you're still heavily involved. And I spoke to someone you
Yeah,
used to work with a few weeks ago, Thomas, who was
yeah,
singing
yeah,
your
yeah, Tom.
praises. So yeah, it would just be great to kind of hear your story and why, if we can
Yeah,
introduce some people along the way to get into it, why they should and the benefits of it really. So floor's
I
open, mate.
mean, cool. So, I mean, um, I suppose we'll start from the beginning. So, when I was sort of like growing up as a junior golfer, 12 years old, started at the game and sort of wasn't actually that good at golf. Didn't really have much help, didn't have a lot of money. Grew up playing at Three Rivers Golf Club back in the day down your neck of the woods.
Oh, did you?
And
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Then I went to Chelmsford after that, and yeah, then but sort of like wasn't didn't get to a great standard at golf, like, but decided, you know what, like if I can't make it on tour, I'm gonna be a coach if I can do. And for me, I went to university at Birmingham and sort of like done 3 years there. And we set up a charity there. We're coaching where we don't. So I don't know if you had Aaron Lansbury on here before or.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so myself, Aaron, and a few other coaches, we set up a bit of a charity for sort of like going into schools and helping sort of like impoverished children that maybe didn't quite have the means to sort of like pay for golf lessons, equipment, stuff like that. Um, and that sort of that stood me in good stead, really. It sort of like gave me a nice insight into a bit of junior coaching, being quite fresh, a bit wet behind the ears, I suppose, and sort of like level one PGA coach. And once I sort of we had to do our placements over the summer holidays, and I went over to this beautiful place over in Ireland, and we was running these amazing junior camps, and it sort of I had sort of free reign really with what I wanted to do. They had sort of like 72 holes of golf, like two pitch and putt courses, like Gaelic games,
Wow.
sort of like fields. So there was a huge area to sort of like design all these amazing summer camps, and like I went out there for 3 years, sort of like each of my sort of like gap years, and it was just incredible. And worked alongside some really cool coaches with it, and we kept coming up with sort of like good ideas and that. And we'd have like 50, 60 kids a week coming in these junior camps, and it was just absolute manic. Um, so when I left junior, they actually offered me a job over at this place over in Ireland, and I was there for a year. But it was too much shop work, and I just didn't really enjoy it. Like I loved coaching; that was all I wanted to do. So I decided to write to the top 100 golf coaches in the UK and ask for a job, basically, because I wanted to become a tour coach. And I was fortunate enough to get a job in Leeds at Night Golf Academy. And anyway, I was coming in, and there was like five other coaches there, and two of them were sort of tour coaches. And I was a 22-year-old thinking I'm going to go in and be a tour coach. And actually, like, why would a tour player step through the doors and go and want to have a lesson with me over these pros that have been experienced and like taught on tour for sort of like 20, 25
Mm.
years. But they had an amazing team there. So we had like tour coaches, a tour psychologist, a tour PT. So it gave me sort of like quite a nice holistic sort of like insight into what a
Mm.
tour player sort of like goes through and that. And for me, that was the pinnacle. I wanted to be a tour coach.
Yeah.
And I thought, after sitting down with sort of like these coaches, I was like, what better way of doing it than to actually sort of like build your own tour players, whether that's sort of like they come to you straight away or you have to do the hard work from 6 years old all the way through to 26 years old. Um, so like myself and Tom and Mark Pearson, Ian Highfield, Johnny Pearson, sort of like some others to mention as well. I've probably missed a couple out there, but we designed this junior golf program called Fuel Golf or Future Elite Junior Golf Program. It was back in the day, and it just went crackers really. Sort of like it was all based around developing sort of children that sort of like loved the game of golf and were physically literate, and ultimately like wanted to, whether that was through a route of uh, entire life participation or going through another route of sort of like trying to excel in the game. We sort of try to grow a huge base of a lot of children at the bottom of it.
Yeah.
um, and from there we started to well, it just became really successful. Sort of like not only was we getting a lot of participants, we was getting a lot of kids that were getting really good at the game as well. Sort of like I suppose a few of them now are sort of like um, think I went back to Alton Hall 2 years ago, and five of the kids that had sort of like come through the junior program were doing their PGA training there. Like the last three Yorkshire amateur champions and stuff had come through. So it's been quite nice to come back to the county to see
Yeah,
sort of like these kids that are maybe 6, 7 years old now, sort of like starting a career in golf, and some of them getting scholarships out to the States and stuff like that. And then from there, I sort of like I done 5 years, 5 or 6 years at Alton, and got headhunted by the Belfry to set up their junior golf programs. I sort of copied and pasted what we had done at Alton Hall over to the Belfry, and didn't quite have as big a team. Sort of like it was more myself doing the junior coaching there, but had like. I mean, like that went a bit crazy at the Belfry. I was sort of like coaching about 100 kids a week. Whereas at Alton Hall, we had sort of four coaches, but we was doing 150 kids between us.
yeah,
I was real heavily focused when I got to the Belfry at sort of like growing. We only had four kids when we first got there at the Belfry, and sort of like went into schools, went and done the outreach, and you sort of do the legwork with it. But before I sort of knew it, sort of like reputation was getting round. That's sort of like the junior program that we had was quite cool, and it kept growing and growing and growing. And I suppose sort of like some of these kids now, I was just checking just before I sort of got onto the call with you, sort of like one of them has just gone back to the States, where sort of like he's got a really cool scholarship, sort of like plays for England national team. And sort of like we had, what did we have out of the 100 kids? We had 17 of them that played for the county. Um, and five of them played for England, and one of them played for the full England national squad. So it was like it was really cool. Like there was this real pyramid of sort of like little kids that had never picked up a golf club before, to all the way to the top, where these kids were going into sort of like playing for England and professional golf and stuff like that. So I then went into a bit of a role when I was at the Belfry, a little bit like you, where we're sort of like myself and Aaron, where we sort of was in charge of the county development program as well
yeah,
with it,
yeah.
which was really good. I'd done that for a couple of years, and then I moved back up to Alton Hall a couple of years ago, and we're just actually starting something new now at a new club down the road called Waterton Park. Myself and a new business partner, Scott McGovern, and we're looking at. We've got an amazing facility here, like beautiful golf course, great short game area, great driving range, nice pitch and putt area. So we're looking at sort of like developing the next junior program here, really, and just taking on two new coaches to sort of help us with it. One of them being like an ex-European tour player in Chris Hansen, who's hopefully going to give us a bit more of an insight into what it really takes to get to the top of that pyramid.
The
So I
journey
suppose
you've been on,
that's the journey so far.
sorry, you've grown two flourishing academies, about to do another one, which is amazing, really. I think it just shows people that it can be done and it can be replicated. And what was that
Yeah,
transition like from did you say Alton Hall to the Belfry? What was that like going to such a,
yeah,
I mean, it's quite shocking actually that a place of that, place that's hosted the Ryder Cup and is our obviously training academy place had four juniors at the time. I
yeah.
bet that shocked you, didn't it, when you first got there?
There was nothing in place. There was no group programs for
Mm.
ladies, juniors, but it's funny, like coming from Alton Hall, they started with no juniors whatsoever. Like
Yeah,
I think it doesn't matter what facility you're at, it takes someone with a bit of passion within junior coaching or ladies coaching or whatever. If you're going to get something like this up and running, it's not just that it just goes from 0 to 100
yeah.
people straight away. You've got to go and do the outreach, and you almost need a bit of a rocket up your jacksie to do it. I was kind of lucky with my first boss in Mark Pearson, in that sort of he was probably quite hard on me as a young pro growing up, but sort of like it really gave me a good foundation of sort of like what I
Mm.
needed to do. Like if I wasn't going out to schools and calling round and sort of like putting posters up in local facilities and stuff like that, then you know what, I got to kick up the jacksie for it. And it sort of showed me how to sort of like get into the schools and what I had to do to drag people back to the facility. And then once they was back at the facility, how to sort of engage with them and get them signed up to programs. And then I suppose sort of that's actually kind of some of the easy bit of it. The hard bit's now keep retaining them and keeping them in the game for the next 15, 20 years, you know?
Absolutely.
Um,
How did you find that? Because we do a very similar thing to yourself in terms of going out outreach into schools, getting people sort of infused in the game and then come into the club. How did you actually find that? Did someone kind of, was it just a case of, right, you've got to go out there, Phil, and go and do it, and off you go? Did you get any, I said you had a proactive pro, but did you get any guidance of how to actually deliver? What was your kind of ethos going into a school? What did you offer initially to get them through the
tell you
door?
what, I was really lucky in that the pro that came in to help us at Alton Hall, a guy called Jonathan Pearson, was like TPI level 3 junior coach and was just like amazing with kids. Kids loved him, you know.
Mm,
And I remember going into a school with him and he'd set up these really cool games. He had like safety all set up properly. He had like these 4 different games, which are just amazing. He had all of his DBS checks, everything like in folders. So he knew what to do as soon as he got in. And I was just like, right, this is how it's set up. But I would never really known that. And then that's been sort of like my model going forward. Like, but I'll never forget how he engaged with the kids. He sort of like asked them like if they knew what a golf club was, if they'd ever played golf on the like before, be that the Nintendo Wii or pitch and
yeah,
putt and stuff. And
yeah.
like the kids just loved it straight off the bat. And it was just like, right, he had them hooked. And then after coaching in the school for the full day, it was knackering. Like you done maybe sort of like 6 classes, something like that, from 9 till 3. And I don't know how teachers do it. In all fairness, like they absolutely like take my hat off to them. But like once I had that bit of a model and sort of like how to get them back to the facility, it was just a bit of a numbers game, really. If we know that we done sort of like outreach for 200 students and we got say 15% of them back to the facility, if we wanted 150 kids, we knew that we had to do outreach for X amount of children or X amount of schools. Part of that was the sociology of it as well, knowing sort of like what the local demographic was like
Yeah.
and sort of like how far people were willing to sort of like travel from. So most of our outreach was from sort of like into schools within sort of like 5 mile distance of the
Mhm.
golf club and that. And um, then we sort of like set up our sort of our classes at times that they would be able to then get back to the facility, you know,
Yeah.
weekends obviously and evening times. Um, and that's why we ended up moving from Alton Hall, because we wasn't allowed to sort of do evening classes anymore. They became a Trapman range, and then um, like it just didn't quite work for their business model for them to have junior group classes anymore in the evening, which is a bit of a shame. But um, for us, it didn't make sense to sort of stay and coach at a place where we couldn't grow junior golf,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, that is a
You know.
shame. Um, so you talk about going into schools and getting them back. You know, we kind of work on about a 10% conversion
Yeah.
rate if we can do. I mean, 15 sounds absolutely amazing. I'd like to get to those numbers one day. How did you go about that then? Was it a case of inviting them to kind of like three three days you put on? Was it just inviting them to like roll up classes, similar things that we would do, that sort of thing? Or did you do anything
Yeah.
outlandish to get them back?
No, I mean, like young coaches don't understand how dogged and determined you've got to be to actually get into a school at first.
Yeah.
It is a nightmare to get past a receptionist. Um, sort of, if you've gotten into a school, great, but if not, the amount of phone calls that I used to have to make to offer out free golf coaching in their school, that I would go in and sort of like say, look, we'll come in, we're all DBS checked, we're PGA qualified. We want to introduce your 300 children to sort of like golf coaching, sort of like, we just need your school hall for a day. Basically, we'll bring all of the equipment. They all get a free golf lesson back at the golf club after and stuff. But it was amazing how many doors you had to knock on to actually get into the schools. I don't know if you found the same.
100%. Absolutely, the outreach you have to put in, the time you have to put in, and actually the constant. I wouldn't say barrage, that's not the right word, but a school might say no at first, but you try and keep engaging with that school maybe 3 or 4 times a year, once a
Yeah.
quarter, just to maybe a situation might change. You might end up getting a new sports lead, or the receptionist has changed.
Yeah.
It's a bit more reciprocal to giving you an email address of the relevant person.
Yeah.
It is difficult, but I think once you get, trying to tell people this for a while, once you get one, you only need one to give you that little bit of confidence, don't you, to actually start. Well, I can do this. I can get into this school. I can start transferring kids from the school setting to the club setting. Once you get a little bit of momentum, and as you say, word of mouth is a massively important thing. You start growing your name a little bit, and the wheel starts to roll a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah. And sort of like once we got into the school, we're trying sort of like have awesome sessions set up if we could do. So like the kids like come out a bit buzzing, but they all got invited then back to an open day.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so we would have something set up on the half terms, normally on sort of like a Saturday and a Sunday. And we done it in age groups. So we done 6 to 8 years, 9 to 12 years, and 13 to 16 years. I don't know if you do something similar on your setup or not, or
We're
whether
not.
you
We're
just
not.
do all as one.
We don't do massive age group stuff. We do if they're sort of more primary, secondary than anything. I would probably say there's no
Yeah, we're
specific sort of
yeah.
ranges.
Yeah, so we sort of like we done that, so we didn't want sort of like these 6 year olds that were coming along to be in the same open day as maybe a
Yeah,
16-year-old
yeah.
open day, because it's a massive.
Different game to them, isn't
I
it?
don't know, the 16, yeah, sort of like they've got nothing in common, the
Uh-huh.
6 and the 16-year-olds really, and sort of like the 16-year-olds often, like when we did group them all together once, it was like there was just not the same engagement. So I'd really recommend, if people are trying to get kids back to the club, to try and have it in sort of like similar sort of age groups or ability levels if they sort of can do. But obviously we was targeting schools that where kids didn't really have any experience before, so it's more on age group. And we actually used to do a scholarship program as well with it. So any kids that sort of like the teachers thought maybe sort of like showed outstanding attitudes, outstanding sports skills, fundamental movement skills, stuff like that, we would actually invite them in for sort of like, we had 5 free scholarships each term basically. So sort of like that was quite a good one to get people on the hook if we knew that there was maybe 5 people in that one class that were all sort of like maybe had sort of like the qualities that we was looking for as an
Yeah,
academy to try and grow like a nice mindset for children and would fit nicely into classes. Sort of like parents really perk their ears up for that, I suppose. If your kid's told by a Chelsea coach or something, oh, you've got a chance of getting a scholarship, bring them down to this open day. It was like, well, I bring them down. So we done a little bit of that. And yeah, I mean, like once we'd done the open days, the next week was like the terms were starting. So normally at the end of it, before they left, parents just signed up. And as you say, like if you can get sort of like a 10% conversion rate from the school that you've been into, that's fantastic. Like it's really good numbers.
yeah. So
And
when you
then
go on,
it
sorry, go on.
then it becomes how much money you want to make, how much time you've got to dedicate to it, and how much money you want to make as a young coach. Like I was I was coaching like 17 classes a week at Alton Hall at one point. It was like you end up making really good money from group classes. It's brilliant. But that's not why I kind of went into it, but it was a byproduct of it.
What you said, isn't it? You've gone out, done the PJ with the mindset, if I want to be a tour coach, and you've kind of, I know you're working with more like elite players at the moment, aren't you? But you've kind of got to a point where I'm gonna make a tour player. I'm not just gonna rock up and start teaching them. So you've built multiple businesses with that ethos, which I just think it just shows it's doable. Like, I just want to try and prove to people that you can actually do it, and you're living proof several times you can blooming do it. I think a lot of people don't believe that they can, and there's no magic wand. You have to put real hard work in initially, don't you? A lot of unpaid stuff, a lot of admin, a lot of
A
as
lot
you
of unpaid stuff.
but once you get that,
Yeah.
you get the ball rolling. You can really make a profitable business out of it.
And I think it's really nice as well, like what the PGA are starting to do, where they've got this PGA mentoring scheme and
Yeah,
stuff. I think sort of like so many of these young kids don't really like coming through the PGA, don't really have that help and guidance to know that. Like, I would never have known that how to sort of like go into a school and that unless Johnny Pearson had showed me what all the steps were of it and that. I would never have been dogged enough to keep going to the other schools and that unless Mark Pearson had kicked me up the jacksie to call more and more, you know. So I think I was just lucky in sort of like the people that I had around me sort of like taught me that side of the business. But as you say, like a lot of people maybe just don't think that they can and they don't have someone to encourage them on a little bit with it, you know?
yeah, you're right. You need someone to keep prodding you, don't you? You start getting a little bit complacent at times and maybe not doing as much as you should. It's nice to have that person to give you that little nudge to keep pushing forwards and not rest on your laurels too much.
Yeah. And I mean, I was really fortunate actually when I left the Belfry, just after COVID, I went to a place, Bromsgrove Golf Club, and it's the most amazing junior setup that I've ever been to in my life. They had like, what did we have? 184 juniors a week, I think that we had there. It was bananas, like absolutely bananas. And sort of like they didn't actually have to do any outreach. Like that was all just like they'd done the hard work at the base of it. And then everything from the local community just filtered into this place because it just had the reputation and it was in such a good location. But I was only at Bromsgrove for about 6 or 7 months. So I didn't have anything to do with sort of like growing that place, but that was a beast. And I really recommend getting them guys on. Like they go really under the radar, the Bromsgrove Golf Club. Like they don't scream or shout or anything like that. They don't do any advertising, but my God, what a machine they have going there of just churning out amazing junior golfers and kids that love the game.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'll check them out and I'll try and get them on. Thanks for that. I was going to ask you at the end who I should get on, so I'll
Yeah,
try
yeah,
and get
yeah.
out them guys
Rob Lang,
definitely.
one
Um,
of the nicest guys you'd ever meet.
no, I'll certainly outreach to him definitely. Going back then to if if you've got a young professional now who is in your same position as yourself, I want to be a tour coach. That's my dream. That's my ambition. What would you? I know you've kind of given us the journey there, but what would you actually say to them now, like realistically? You know, it's achievable, but you're not going to be able to stand there straight away and teach tour pro off the street. How would you kind of? What would you say to yourself in the same if you had to talk to yourself in that same position many years ago?
Think I was sort of like chasing the dream a little bit and probably a bit naive with it. Um, in the case that the better a junior golfer gets, the more fingers come in the coaching pie, as it were. Like, you know, sort of, I remember this one junior that I had sort of like coached and sort of like an amazing relationship with and gone through sort of like I was his home coach and then he got into county coaching and then got into England regional and then England national and then university. So we ended up having 16 coaches in his training space. And it's like, then they'll go and get, they're torn from almost pillar to post from playing for their club, playing for their county, playing for their regional squad. And like, actually, sort of like, it's such a long journey and it's so easy to cock it up for juniors, you know, like 16 people telling you different things. And I think earlier in my sort of like coaching journey, I maybe didn't have the integrity or something to stand up to the coaches and the parents of it and almost have sort of be able to say like this is too much, like this is madness, and you sort of go along with it because you're surrounded by
Yeah,
other coaches maybe that are sort of probably rephrase that. You're sort of like in you're trying to help this junior but you've got 16 coaches maybe that are sort of like also trying to do the same thing, but actually it's easier to ruin it rather than to
yeah,
help it. So I think sort of like looking back, I think trying to make it as a tour coach, growing my own thing, I think sort of like the top of the pyramid bit that would need to be in place better than what I'd done it before. So I want to start sort of like a college program, so where these kids from the bottom have gone through, say, like England regionals and stuff like that, they have somewhere to go at the top of this. Because at the moment, sort of like, there's not many places for these kids to go, especially in Yorkshire. There's nothing. It's the biggest county. There's no golf colleges or anything like that. But there are, I think, so like I'd probably promote myself to focus a little bit more on that bit, to make sure that infrastructure was in place, not just focus all of my time on the outreach and growing and the fun participation bit. I think that next bit as well I would have had in place for a perfect program to develop these players, you know. And that's kind of what I wanted to do at the Belfry. I kind of wanted to be a feeder for the PGA, to have sort of like this base and come through, and then there would be a college system in place where these kids would then either go into sort of like the PGA, or they go into scholarships and stuff like that. But you know, it's a long journey to that 18 years old, and then when they get to 18 years old, they often get scholarships and they move away and get different coaches and stuff like that, and that can be really hard to take as well for a coach that's maybe coached them since 6 years old or something, or for like 12 years, and then you're sort of, they have a new coach and they're away, you know.
Yeah, it's difficult. You get them to that level, and or to a level to go to America certainly, and then yeah, they kind of disappear a little bit, don't they? You keep in touch a bit. You
Yeah,
might do the odd Zoom bits and bobs, but they're busy chasing their dream, and you've got to. Oh,
let
technically,
go
you've kind of got to
really.
fill that. You've got to fill their space, haven't you? In a way, I know it sounds a little bit cutthroat, but you know that they've gone, that income's kind of gone a little bit, and you've got to fill that time. But you're right, you can go on a journey with someone right from the grassroots right up to that. You know, there's not many. Certainly, looking at individual lessons with adults, there's not many adults I'm going to work with for probably 15 years, but there's
12 years or
several,
whatever.
exactly, there's several kids there, more than that, into the sort of 15s 20s that go through the whole journey with you, and whether that is to professional ranks or that is just to playing golf regularly with their
Yeah.
friends, it's it's just, they go on a similar sort of pathway, which is really really good actually.
Yeah, and it's like this week I've had a message off a kid that I used to teach at the Belfry when he was like 12 years old, and he's gone through university and everything now, and he's like, I stopped playing golf once I got to university. I didn't have much opportunity, but I'm looking at coming back into it. And it's like, have you got a day that I can come up and see you and we'll just have a catch up and stuff? And I was like, yeah, like, I'd love that. It'd
Really
be
cool,
so.
isn't it?
It's like, yeah, exactly. Just to know that sort of like after 10 years or something, like he still remembers my golf lessons and sort of like
Mm.
that impact, and he still wants to have them, sort of thing. Like getting back into it is nice, you know,
Have you ever
rewarding.
definitely rewarding? Before we finish, just a question on that. So you're talking about people that have got to appropriate, like high standards. Do you ever have any of them come back and help you deliver some of your camps and maybe come in and meet some of the kids? How does that kind of, we try and do that a lot, have a kind of a loop round so they come meet them, they come and
Yeah.
support in maybe summer camps with the youngsters, give back to the
Yeah.
game a little bit more. Do you promote that as well?
Yeah, I was really lucky actually. Once I got back to Alton Hall from the Belfry, there was a kid that I used to teach, Joe Burns, and sort of like just the nicest kid. And like I said, like, why don't you come and sort of like help me, sort of like on some of the Saturdays, and I'll give you a free golf lesson for it, sort of thing. So he used to rock up on Saturday mornings and help me with sort of like the mentoring scheme that we had for the juniors. And then I sort of like helped him get into um, like the AGMS program at Birmingham, and then helped him sort of like get a job out of university. And then I like, it just been amazing. Like you know that he had a passion for coaching, and as
Mm.
soon as I had a role that came up, I was like, Joe, come and join me at sort of like Alton Hall. And it was so lovely to sort of like see him from maybe like 13, 14 years old, sort of like developing from volunteering to university to working at Wentworth to then working like with me. It was lovely to see him go like full route from beginner golfer to PGA member, and then so like he's thriving over in Ireland now. He's doing really good. He's Joe. He's doing a wonderful junior program out there actually, and it's like, you know, he got a lot of them hours done of junior coaching in the trenches, as it were, sort of like as a 12, 13 year old in like the mentoring scheme, you know.
You've shaped you've shaped somebody's career, which is just it's that
Yeah.
type of story. So you know, you don't. It's a memory, isn't it? It's like something you can cherish for your. They might not be like playing, but they're building and growing their own academies. What a great story that is to kind of to have with you. You know that you've supported someone and put them on the path to being a fully fledged member of the PJ. That's quality. That must make you
Yeah.
feel really really chuffed.
Oh, it's like I remember his dad sort of taking me to the side and saying sort of like, thanks for everything that you've done for Joe. And I was just like, I didn't really think of it like that, but I was just like, I was really proud of myself. I was like, I've helped this lad through sort of like 10, 11 years and stuff, and like loved it. And he's just like the best coach now as a result of it and stuff. And it's like, if I had anything to do with that sort of thing, I was like, yeah, like that's one thing that I've done good in my career, you know?
No, that's quality. And I think for a lot of like assistants out there, you don't realise sometimes how much of a, they come along for their golf lessons. You enjoy it. They enjoy your time. You enjoy being with them. You don't actually realise the impact you're having on them as a person, just as well as a golfer.
Yeah, and I mean that is a big thing that sort of like Tom Devine, like when we set up Fuel, it was like person first. It was like we was
Said
more
that.
in we was more interested in developing well-rounded human beings that love the game of golf sort of thing than creating sort of like Tiger Woods and that. It was like we wanted these kids to be like nice, respectable kids and that, and sort of like ingrained that growth mindset from the get-go that was more worried about your attitude than actually if you're any good. So like we had plenty of kids that were really good at golf really young, but you know what, they didn't really get all of our attention. It was more the kids that sort of showed that promise and want and desire
Mm.
and sort of yeah, a little bit more of that mindset that we were sort of looking for. That was what we base a lot of our scholarship program on. Sort of like, did you have the right mindset for it? And then it was athletes second, and then golfer was actually the final piece of the jigsaw for us.
No, he said those 3 points exactly the same as what you've done. It's a great way. It's a great way to build an academy. Absolutely. Well, before I let you go, um, again, like I said at the start, trying to get assistants enthused into maybe taking a career path down junior coaching. Would you say that? Well, you're going to say. Hopefully, you're going to say yes. But would you say it's definitely it's viable, it's achievable, it's attainable for people to make a fledgling career out of it?
If you tell you what, if you go from the hard nosed businessman part of it, you're an idiot if you don't do it. Like it's the most like if as an assistant professional you want to make money, that's where you can make the most money. Like if you've got 10 kids in a class all paying you 10 quid a session, and you guarantee that, like if you've got 17 classes on a week, like you're making good money. You're not making your minimum wage. Like you're doing good money with that. But it isn't just that you have sort of like 10 kids in a class. Like it's the free lessons, it's the outreach and everything that goes with it, which is hard work, but it's fantastic. You have to learn sort of like time management skills. You have to learn how to deal with parents, and you have to learn how to deal with all different types of kids and sort of disabilities, and there's loads of stuff that comes with it. And I remember a good golf coach once said sort of like it shouldn't be the person with the lowest qualified professional that takes the junior sessions at a facility. It should always be the person with the most qualifications, because there's so many subtle nuances. There's such a long journey and road that kids are going through, and actually sort of like I think that's why the game's maybe not in as healthy a position as it sort of should be, because we're trusting maybe sort of like assistant professionals that don't have anyone to mentor them and guide them with sort of like someone's first experience of the game. And if that's not a positive experience, unfortunately that might be that person out of the game for the long
Forever.
haul. And
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Whereas when you got someone like, let's say Aaron or Tom, like giving a kid a first lesson, they've given thousands of them lessons. They're experienced with it. It's like I'm sure that they're going to do a better job of creating that environment that that kid loves than someone that maybe um, hasn't given a session before, you know, or hasn't been sort of, I suppose, engaged in junior coaching before. So um, uh, if I was a young coach, I'd go and shadow. I'd go and reach out to people like Tom and Aaron and yourself and that. Be like, look, can I come down and sort of like see what you're doing and that? And you know what, like that's always the person that I would give a job to as well.
They're
Like
willing to
always,
sacrifice
like
a bit of their time to learn. You know they're going to put the effort in.
absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Like reach out, speak to good coaches, go and experience it. And you know what, before you know it, it's worth the free time that you put in, you know?
Definitely, definitely. Well, thank you very much for your time. That's been really
Pleasure.
insightful. A lot of people are going to get a lot from that, definitely. And I will contact the guys at Bromsgrove to try and get them on with your recommendations